I knew I had to speak because that was exactly the word and sense that came through when I was receiving my placement of the animal Reiki symbol, the Tree of Life symbol. And in that healing, that it was very clear to me that the form of expression that kind of really captures the sense is that voice and speaking about the journey and the experience and a bit of what I'm coming to find in this path of Reiki, in this path of inner listening, in this path of connecting to all beings. And so that is what this is, speaking. And I want to share about what I'm hearing from Cederberg. And Cederberg is a horse that he's a thoroughbred that I have received an opportunity to work with him. And I have found this experience to be a very unexpected and surprising mirror of myself, and truly engaging with exiting my ego and assumption and persona of like good and that, and coming into this real sense of presence, listening, and the flow of the energy itself. So it's been a surrender to that process, which has been unexpected, very interesting for me. So I historically have had a pretty cut off relationship from the horse racing world. It's felt very fraught and fearful and tense and knotted in my body. Just this constriction and this coiling, and I feel in my mind I go a blank disconnect where I don't feel much of um, anything beyond my own fear and judgment. And my family lineage, my dad, he grew up going to the races with his brother and his grandfather. And throughout my life, my dad and family have been involved in partnerships with taking care of racehorses and racing, having them race. And it has been something that I've felt a lot of shame about, a lot of secrecy, a lot of resistance towards, a lot of judgment and projection onto my dad and brother about um, like this kind of this righteous social justice sense of like this isn't right and this is wrong, and like really putting on a lot of corruption and assumption, um, without much space. Like there was no space in any of those feelings or beliefs. It was so, and is so knotted. And so I've lived with that. I've lived with that sense, but I haven't really connected to it as like this is something of significance for me that I'm holding, that I need to release, that I need to work with or on. And I, at the beginning of this summer, had the opportunity to go to Center, the Omega Center in Rhinebeck, New York, where I connected to beautiful Reiki practitioners and teachers, and I received a holy fire healing experience from William Lee Rand. It was a group healing, and what came through in terms of what I saw visually in that experience was surprising to me, was the Saratoga racetrack and these horses and the colors of the silks, and then also the numbers they have on them, and all of that color just circling and guiding around the track. And this sense of the light kind of bringing forward this circulation and this synchronicity between these beings, the human animal and the animal horse, as one. And it was very surprising to me because, like I said, I've kind of like shut that off and disconnected from that. And so there was discomfort when I connected to that, and discomfort with how that's lived in my lineage. And so I became curious since it came through Reiki. I trust that. But it's always like the Reiki knows where it needs to go. And that's not always what maybe the ego or I felt comfortable with. But at this conference, I had that experience. And then there was a woman named Pam Allen LeBlanc, who is an animal communicator and a Reiki animal master, animal Reiki master and teacher. And at that, I felt very connected to the authenticity of what she was saying in such a authentic way. And I knew I wanted to learn from her. And so when she was, when we were all like checking out of the retreat and leaving this conference retreat, I happened to see her, and I just felt she saw me and I saw her. And that being seen invited me to step into what was already kind of being generated inside. And so I knew I wanted to learn from her. So I looked on her website and looked and saw that she was teaching in animal Reiki training in Campobello Island in Canada. So I was like, I gotta go there. And that's a whole other story that I will tell, because there's actually a lot of Reiki resonance and how it all came together in a way that is, again, this anchoring of intuition and inner guidance and trust. But in terms of animal Reiki and the work with Cederberg and the horses and horse racing, what became very clear to me. So I signed up for that training, and then before the training, you get a manual, Reiki, an animal Reiki manual. And so I was able to read that, and in that I was introduced to something that I was already connecting to, which is the divine animal kingdom. And so much of what I see when I go into Reiki for myself or with others is through animal guides that I have come to know hold deep wisdom about what it means to live and heal and connect and feel wholeness. And there's a deep, deep trust in me, in them. And before I connected to receiving the Tree of Life animal Reiki symbol and receiving that placement, I was already connecting to these beings where I would see them, and I at some point I was like, I'm going to watch, and I'm going to let that guide. And I would find myself just watching where my giraffe guide would come through and kind of just gently begin the journey. And just kind of find this gaze in this way with his neck, her neck, or their neck. And just kind of this very gentle, genuine journeying to where we would need to go. And then from there, I'd often find my husky just came right in and had this sense of strength and sovereignty and expression and truth. So I often connected and allowed that to come through in the throat. And other beings, the horse came through at the heart, and I would find that I would see either that movement of the horse, this full, unbridled embrace of running and movement and stride, or this very strong stillness, simply looking in one's eyes and one's gaze. And so, all to say, and I want to introduce and share more of what I've connected to with those guides, but I connected to that. And then in reading the manual, I found that there's actually, what they've come to know about that energy, the animal Reiki energy, is that there is the divine animal kingdom. And these divine beings connect and lead and facilitate so much of the healing experience and brings us into a sense of oneness and wholeness. And I was like, that's real? And it is. And for me, it's been the most genuine, gentle, trustworthy truth, these beings. Because they know outside of the ego. They really know. And so they came in and they said, you got to speak. And what I've found is the speaking doesn't always have to come through the mind. It actually can come through this deep listening. And this deep listening, I've sensed, is listening and opening to experience the moment present as this pathway. And so I've allowed that to guide me into working with Cederberg, a thoroughbred, a racehorse. And I realized also through reading the Animal Reiki manual and being with that I was able to differentiate between my own fear and projection and ego, and how that I can really own was being mapped onto horse racing and those beings. And it's much more uncomfortable to say and stay open to listening and learning and being with these beings as they are. And it's like very interesting to me because it's like I wouldn't expect to be learning these lessons in a space that I had such certainty that was based on this belief that all of this space was just about control and power. And had to soften that to see, just to see and listen and learn through being with. And I sensed that was actually all that these beings ever ask of us. And so that has opened me to work with Cederberg. And in that, there's stuff that he has shared with me about, I've asked questions and he shared with me and he's shown me. And then I'm having this parallel. He's, teaching me this, but then it's also, I come into, like, I'll leave that environment of being around the stable and the barn, and then I'll leave and I'll realize the wisdom he's sharing with me about how I can begin to see and experience my own life. So I wanted to share those things that he has shared with me directly in my asking. And he's said, I asked about like horse racing, like what, because he's actually racing this Sunday. He's like, do you want to run? He said, I can and I am. And that was it. I sensed he just connected to I can and I am. Just is. And when I asked about racing, he taught me and told me that we run as one. And it was we run as one, WON, one. And so I feel that's intentional in that they understand themselves as connected in the field. And so they're running and as one. They all have one. They're like, okay, we're one. We run as one. And they know that. He also shared that a lot of, because I also connect and I do, a little bit of Reiki with Cederberg, and what was kind of coming through, what felt like was being asked, was this call to trust. To really trust. To really, really trust. And this is something I learned in the animal Reiki training, and what I felt like I knew, but now I undoubtedly know, is that every being has a divine purpose. And so of course, our animal beings, a horse, has a divine purpose that they know. And so much of what I got was that he just wanted to be trusted. He just wanted to be trusted. And you can't fake trust. You can't mask trust. You can't say trust. It's in really being with and letting go into that trust of this divine purpose or this divine path or whatever it might be, and letting that lead. So I kind of entered into that trust. I trust Cederberg. I trust that he knows. He also shared he said, stop trying to be something you're not. He's like, stop trying to be something you're not. Stop trying to be something you're not. And he said, I understand you more than you understand me, which made sense to me. It definitely made sense to me. And I felt, and I feel with the time, is this ask to release into relationship. Release into relationship of being with. It's like there's no rigidity in that. There's no requirement in that. Release into relationship with. And it was interesting. Cederberg, the name, it's about in South Africa. There's the Cederberg tree, and it's this there's the water, then there's the cliffs. And so, again, this tree, and it's growing where it is, it's very resilient. It's very strong. It just is as it embodies its being. And with Cederberg, he exists as that. Resilience is free. It just is, because it is our being, and kind of unresisting, and the resiliency just is. It's free in every being. So he told me that. And then it was interesting to me, and part of the reason where I've felt connected to going over and spending time with Cederberg and spending time, there's so many beings back there that take care of these horses. And they're Hispanic, and they genuinely are the ones that are allowing this industry to exist. They walk them, they feed them, they wrap their ankles, they hug them. And the friends that I've met over there and connected to are so kind. And this is the work that they do. They take care of them. And that's part of how they're here. And I think the horses understand that. Because when I just said, Cederberg, what do you want to share with me? And he just said, IC is free. IC free. And I'm not going to try to mentally try to understand what that is or what that means, but ice, E, free. And there's so much activity around one's ability to experience safety and freedom and presence in this country. And I sense what Cederberg was saying was the horses understand that. They understand how we're all connected, and they want those beings here. And so I'm still trying to understand what that, I understand what that means. And though it taught me the wisdom that how Cederberg and how horses, they have this understanding of how the human animal and how the human system is working. And they actually have more wisdom where they know how to make sense of that, even if it's not making sense to the human mind. And I do believe there is something in that is of their divine purpose. He also said spend time behind. Maybe that has something to do with, and again, like they understand how how they're running together, and how spending time behind and letting that and following that. So, and he was also laughing as like some humans were coming by and like talking about things about like the races and all of that theory. And they were laughing. He was laughing. So I thought that was very funny. And I feel encouraged just to continue to share about this experience and this journey of learning to listen and speaking what's coming through. And as I left that environment, I realized a few things about why this work with Cederberg has kind of hit into my heart, is because I feel it so real. As I was there offering Reiki and in this listening and in this communication, I understand that it's opening and it's letting in and it's giving. So it's being in this reciprocity. And so I kind of unbrace, and I let Cederberg get close. And he'll do this thing where he'll bring his head and nose and come right up to my head. And I take a breath and I let that in. And I was so happy that Cederberg also received the placement, because with the animal Reiki, you receive, the symbol, and there's a tree of life symbol, and he received that symbol, so he is a Reiki horse. He has Reiki, and so he offers that healing, which I also believe is, and this is my opinion, right, that he's connected to all the beings there and is running with the Reiki and having that also guide in this very gentle, genuine way for the highest and greatest good. And I can breathe with that, because I can trust in that. And when Cederberg, I let him get close, and he put his nose on the left of my forehead, and then he moved it to the right of my forehead, and then back to the left. And he sensed I just needed some crown and third eye support. He offered me Reiki. Didn't have to draw the symbols or activate it or even go. He just, again, exists in that energy and expresses that energy. And again, when we learn to listen and to receive and to be in harmony, it's how can we not feel so loved and seen? And that is what this experience with Cederberg is beginning to show me, where there might be these layers and this history and this, all of that, which I feel. I really feel that. It's this navigation of the mental layer, but I also sense in presence with, it's this oneness, this connection, this trust, this mirror of take this now with me and also take that out there. Be in harmony. Let that happen. So I felt like I just wanted to share that. And if this resonates at all, I really welcome any messages, any comments, any questions. And I feel very grateful to the wisdom of the animals, to my teacher, Pam Allen LeBlanc, and Reiki, and this energy to guide and allow this learning in the way that's beyond the mind and really in connection to what is and what can be from that place of truth. So thank you. Namaste. Blessings.